Today I'm gonna do a demonstration how to manually chop drums by hand, not not using Beat Detective. The reason that I first started doing this is because the studio that I work at has an older computer system still in place and it's running on Pro Tools 6. So not really trusting that old version of Pro Tools. Just kind of do everything manually just to make sure everything's good and properly chopped. So for the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to chop 2 bars of these drums that I recorded. So you want to make sure all your drums are grouped. You're selecting all your drums at the same time. And the first step, you begin at the very beginning of the track. You want to find the transients. You can already see that this first kick drum is off by a bit from the grid. So I'm going to stay in slip mode. Normally you'd come like a little bit before it, and I start to use tab to transient. Get right here, zoom in, make sure it's right up on the transient. And then another hotkey is Command E, separate at selection. And you kind of, for me, it's a lot easier to be doing this because I recorded these drum parts, so I know what it should be chopped to. So I know that this whole song is based around eighth notes and eighth notes on the hi-hats and where the kicks and the snares should be. So I'm always paying attention to the grid. So I want my kicks to be on 1, my snares on 2. So then I go to my next. I know that there should be an eighth note hi-hat right around here. It's kind of hard to see. You can make your zoom in a bit bigger and you kind of see the transients more here. Sometimes the transients off. That's why it's good to stay in slip mode and kind of get as close as you can to the transient. And you want to go to the microphone that is closest to where that transient will be. So I played a hi-hat note. I want to get as close to the hi-hat transient, and everything else will be a little bit later according to its distance. It gets a lot easier to see once you get into the first, when there's a lot of cymbal swells and there's a lot of resonance happening. It's harder to see the transients, but as I get more into the groove, I'm just playing the hi-hat parts. So you can see I've got all my individual hits of the drum pattern. Here's what it sounds like originally. So I'm going to make this a little tighter by moving the transients to the grid. So normally I would start from the very beginning and work my way all the way through the song, start to finish. And then I would work backwards and drag the transients, because the transients get lost if you're moving forward. So then you have to think about dragging everything. So I'm going to start backwards. Now I'll have to chop one more transient so that I can move this kick. So if I was to go the other direction, I would start to lose transients. That's the whole point of this, is getting the transients right on the grid. So these are ahead of the beat, so I'm moving them back in time. And then if it overlaps, you have to be sure to drag your transient back so you don't lose it right there on the grid. So now that you have all of your transients dragged to the grid, they'll be on time, but you're gonna lose a little bit of the very first start of it, and it's not gonna be blended into each other. So you can play it. It sounds a little weird, but you can hear where the beat should be. So now you want to smooth it out. Go back into slip mode. Basically, just drag the first bit of the transient over so it's connecting into the next one. Well, this one I'm going to leave because I didn't start from the beginning. Then you can hit the arrow key and go over. Smooth the rest of your transients out. You want to be as close as possible to the next transient without starting it on the previous clip. So you can see it starts to start right there. Take it back just a little bit. Because when you crossfade, you're going to be crossfading at about 2 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds. So you don't want that little bit to leak through. You start to hear that. You want the fades to be as close to the next transient as possible. Okay, now that you have all of your drums chopped, moved to the grid, and smoothed together, you want to take all of your drum pieces, select them, and do a big old batch fade. Set it about 3 milliseconds. Usually you can't really hear it at all. You make sure if your fades are nice and close to your transients. Finish them all. And usually it's nice to do consolidate clip. And there you go. Fully chopped drums.